own culture. And I ain't seen nobody be a bigger snowflake than white men who complain. Mommy, they won't let us play and have everything we used to have under the old regime where we were racist and supremacists and dominant and patriarchs and hated gays and lesbians and transsexuals. That, yeah, you got to share. This ain't your world. This everybody's world. And let me invite...
Good point. Jordan, let's have you jump in on this idea of what you see as the pernicious danger of groupthink when it comes to ethnicity, when it comes to gender. Why do you think that's one of the primal sins, in your view, of quote, political correctness?
Well, I think it's one of the primal sins of identity politics players on the left and the right, just to be clear about that. Personally, since this has got personal at times, I'm no fan of the identitarian right. I think that anybody who plays a game, a conceptual game where group identity comes first and foremost, risks an exacerbation of tribalism. It doesn't matter whether it's on the left or the right.
Allow him to see clearly the issues that are before us.
But that is to be complicit in the very problem itself terminologically. You're beginning at a point that's already productive and controversial. You're saying, how can he get his equality back? Who are you talking about? Jordan Peterson? Trending #1 on Twitter? Jordan Peterson with an international bestseller? I want him to tweet something out about me in my book. Jordan Peterson, right? This is what I'm saying to you. Why the rage, bruh? You're doing well, but you're a mean, mad white man. And you're going to get us right. And I have never seen so much wine and snowflaking. There's enough wine in here to start a vineyard.
And with regards to my privilege or lack thereof, I mean, I'm not making the case that I haven't had advantages in my life and disadvantages in my life like most people. You don't know anything about my background or where I came from, and it doesn't matter to you because fundamentally I'm a mean white man. That's a hell of a thing to say in a debate.
Let me just say...
Very, very brief, because I want to move on to men and women.
The mean, mad white comment was not predicated upon my historical excavation of your past. It's based upon the evident vitriol with which you speak and the denial of a sense of equanimity among combatants in an argument. So I'm saying again, you're a mean, mad white man, and the viciousness is evident.
Okay. Let's reset. Change the decks here. Let's talk about another big factor.
Well, I think I'm going to point out two things again. The first is that my question about when the left goes too far still hasn't been answered. And then the second thing I'm going to point out is that, you know, it's conceivable that I am a mean man. You know, I mean, maybe I'm meaner than some people and not as mean as others. I think that's probably more the case. But I would say the fact that race got dragged into that particular comment is a better exemplar of what the hell I think is wrong with the politically correct left than anything else that could have possibly happened.
Imagine the hurt, the anxiety, the insult that you might genuinely feel, according to what I felt was an appropriate comment of description at the moment of its expression. But imagine now those hurt feelings and
not hurt.
Okay, you feel great. You feel great about it.
That's really different. I'm not a victim. I'm not hurt. I'm appalled.
You're not hurt. Okay, you wouldn't be a victim. So what's interesting is that whatever non-traditional feelings of empathy you endure at this particular point, the point is, imagine then the horrors that so many others have had to put up with for so long when they are refused to acknowledge their humanity. Now, I take your point seriously.
So your group
let me finish. Let me finish, though. Let me finish.
To me.
Let me finish, sir.
That figures.
You're not my inquisitioner, okay? What I'm saying to you is that we need to an indigenous or First Nations community where we're able to engage in some of the lovely conversation, but also to listen and hear. And when I added race to that, I was talking about the historically evinced inability to acknowledge others' pains equally to the one that they are presently enduring. So, as a human being, I love you as my brother, but I stand by my comment.
Well, I've seen the sorts of things that you're talking about. I happen to be an honorary member of an indigenous family, so don't tell me about what I should go see with regards to oppression. You don't know anything about me.
You asked me a question, I gave you a response.
Yeah. You gave me a generic response,
It's
a generic race-based response.
Jordan Peterson, I would like for you to come with me, Michael Eric Dyson, to a Black Baptist church. You been to one of those?
I would be happy to do that, by the way.
Okay, all right, I'm going to hook you up.
Okay,
right.
good. We'll make sure that happens. One more quick round, and then we're going to go to closing statements. And Stephen Fry, I want to get your response. Why won't this be, in a sense, looked back upon as something positive a generation from now?
I think people will look back on this debate and wonder why political correctness wasn't discussed. I said it was...
century, and to define how you think standard left-wing thinking, which has a valuable place, goes too far, since it obviously does.
Has the right gone too far? Has the right gone too far?
Of course the right has gone too far.
Tell us how.
Well, how about Auschwitz?
I mean...
Okay. Well, I was talking about 20th century
right?
politics.
What else? More recently, what has gone wrong with the right?
It's threatening to go too far in identitarian Europe, that's for sure. It's gone too far in Charlottesville. It went too far in Norway. Like, how long a list do you want? And why am I required to produce that? To show you that I don't like the identitarian right?
I just thought I'd ask you.
I was actually asking you a question. So your assumption is somehow that I must be on the side of the right. It's like, look, the right hasn't occupied the humanities and the social sciences. It's as simple as that for me. If they had, I'd be objecting to them.
Say that again, I didn't hear that.
The right has not occupied the social sciences and the humanities. And the left clearly has. The statistical evidence for that is overwhelming.
Sir, what about IQ testing in terms of genetic inheritance?
But there's no way I'm going to agree that political correctness is the way to address any of that. And there's plenty of evidence to the contrary, some of which I would say was displayed quite clearly tonight.
Thank you both. We're just going to do a quick discussion with the online audience who's watching right now, just to get your reactions to the debate. And maybe to start with you, Jordan. There were some heated moments here. Did that surprise you, that the exchanges that you had with Michael Eric Dyson?
Well, I wouldn't say it surprised me. Well, I suppose it probably did. It just didn't seem like a very good tactical move. You know, and I stand by what I said. I don't see any reason at all that my racial identity needed to be dragged into the discussion, independent of my personality proclivity.
And what I tried to, in terms of giving a brief genealogy, we didn't have political correctness as long as white, straight men were in charge.
Lines after taking on Bill Maher and other liberal panelists over the weekend and educating them on the left's lack of respect for Trump supporters. Take a look.
Your country is polarizing in a way that's not good, and that, you know, people are going after Trump, and I understand that. It's not like I don't understand that, but there's all these people that elected him and that are identified with him, and they're not taking this well. You need to have respect for the rest of your citizens, and if your country isn't going to pull itself apart, and I really see this happening.
Dr. Peterson joins us right now. He, of course, is a psychology professor at the University of Toronto and author of a New York Times bestseller, 12 Rules for Life, and just released the new audiobook version of Maps of Meaning. He joins us live right now from Canada. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Morning.
So there you were watching the liberals on the panel talking, and then you started to educate them or give them your point of view on why they lost. Were they receptive to that?
Well, I don't know if the question that I asked was really addressed, which is that if Trump is taken out by one means or another, then how are you going to heal the rift between the left and the right in the United States? And this is a serious problem. I mean, everyone, regardless of their political orientation, needs to live together. And if we want peace and if we have any sense, we're going to want peace. But the question wasn't addressed.
But the interesting thing is, and something that you brought up, was just the fact that the other panelists were not on your side politically, but given the way that elections work, they have to accept, well, they don't in many cases, the election results, and you've got to respect the person who did vote for Donald Trump because they were simply exercising their right.
Well, I think you've seen in the United States, probably ever since a special prosecutor was nominated to go after Clinton, I think you've seen attempts to bring down the presidents legally every time there's been an election, and that seems to have been ramped up. And that's very dangerous. I mean, it's obviously the president isn't above the law,
Sure.
But increasingly the political parties seem to be using extra like means outside of the electoral process to impose their will on the electoral outcome, and this is a bad thing.
Well, just look at what the Democrats in the Senate are trying to do right now to Mike Pompeo. Never in history has anybody tried to shut down a president's selection for Secretary of State, and this appears to be based on politics.
Yeah, well, I mean, people need to understand that those on the other side of the political spectrum have their reasons for looking at the world the way they do. I mean, each side can become too extreme, but if you want a civil society, then people have to be civil to one another, and I see that breaking down. And it's not a pathway we want to trot if we have any sense.
Well, you're right. There isn't a lot of civility these days, and there's not a lot on campus. I know you're a professor, and you go out and you're an alternative voice on college campuses. We're going to play you a soundbite from Candace Owens, who is the communications director for Turning Point USA. She was at UCLA in the last couple of days, and she was confronting some Black Lives Matter protesters, and she had a point for them. Listen to this, and then we want to get your point of view.
Sure.
Victim mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did. And it's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans.
You're overly privileged Americans, she said that. And then a few hours or a day or two later, Kanye West, the singer, the artist, tweeted this out. I love the way Candace Owens thinks. And then now he's taking a lot of heat because he's supporting somebody who's from the political right. What did you make of what she had to say?
Well, I think that Candace is commenting about the danger of adopting a victimization oppressor narrative, and it's a narrative that the hard left has really been pushing, and ever since Marx, of course, that the world is composed of those who are victimized and those who are the oppressors, and everyone successful is an oppressor, and everyone else is a moral victim, like a morally acting victim. And it's a very, very dangerous narrative, and it's certainly one that's unbelievably widespread on university campuses. To look at the world that way, to look at the world through a group identity lens, is puts us back in a tribal situation and will produce conflict. It has throughout the 20th century. And so Candace is objecting to that, and rightly so. It's an unbelievably pernicious ideology, and the universities are to blame for distributing it in large part. It's really appalling and dangerous.
Well, when you look at just politics in general, during the last election cycle back in 2016, the Democrats did adopt a very strong identity politics program, and all the postmortems had said that really didn't work. So it will be interesting to see what the Democrats do going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, the right-wingers, the conservative types like Candace have to tell a better story than the Democrats, and the story's got to be, this goes for centrist liberals too, the story has to be that, there's obviously racial differences and ethnic differences and gender differences and all of that, and some of that manifests itself in terms of prejudice, but the fundamental issue is that we've always regarded the individual as the measure in the West, and that's the best idea the world's ever had. And if we lose that, then it's going to be catastrophic. So everyone should be pushing against that, whether they're on the right or the left, if they have any sense. And the moderate left needs to dissociate themselves from the radical left, and this is something they refuse to do. It's conceptually difficult to do it, but it's a moral imperative. It's a moral necessity.
Let's see what happens. All right, Jordan, thank you very much. By the way, folks, Dr. Peterson has developed a new online writing program. It's called Self-Authoring. If you're interested, go to selfauthoring.com for more information. And Dr. Peterson, thank you very much for joining us today from Canada.
All right, Candace Owens, she's the communications director for Turning Point USA. She's been on our show a lot. She was out at UCLA, right? Liberal California, and she was heckled. She was talking about, other issues, I think finance, and she was heckled by someone in the crowd, a few people in the crowd, Black Lives Matter protesters.
Exactly.
And this was her response to them.
Victim mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did. And it's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans.
Well, her comments at UCLA went viral, and out of nowhere, who saw this coming? Kanye West tweeted this out. I love the way Candace Owens thinks. Then suddenly, he has been taking heat from the political left about that. We had Candace Owens on over the weekend, and she had this observation about what's going on regarding, first, her comments about Black Lives Matter, and then Kanye West jumping on the bandwagon.
There is no value in being a victim. There is no value in being oppressed. There is only value in looking forward toward the future, and that is what I preach and what I practice every single day, and what I'm trying to wake up the black community to understand. For too long, we have been used by pawns, and Black Lives Matter is an example of that. They are pawns to the Democratic Party that go out and ruin their lives for something that they don't even understand, and which is fundamentally false.
She also tweeted this out. I'm freaking out at Kanye West. Please take a meeting with me. I tell every single person that everything I have been inspired to do was written in your music.
Wow. Candace said that?
And do you remember when Kanye West, he was also one of the people that get up after Katrina, and he said George Bush doesn't like black people, or remember that brought a lot of controversy. Then he did this horrible thing and visited the President of the United States, the President-elect of the United States at Trump Tower. He got backlash from that. He pretty much does his own thing. Dr. Jordan Peterson, who's written one of the most successful books in the world today, talked about that after Steve played the soundbite of Candace speaking out against that heckler.
Candace is commenting about the danger of adopting a victimization oppressor narrative, and it's a narrative that the hard left has really been pushing. Everyone successful is an oppressor, and everyone else is a moral victim. To look at the world through a group identity lens puts us back in a tribal situation and will produce conflict. And so Candace is objecting to that, and rightly so. It's an unbelievably pernicious ideology, and the universities are to blame for distributing it in large part.
Oh, I agree with him. The worst is when you're around someone who does have that victim mentality, who always thinks that, why is it fair that someone else got something that I didn't get, and they're not willing to work hard to achieve their dreams and to get where they want to go. Those are the worst people to be around.
And he's a professor, and he's saying the problem, in large part, is starting at the universities. We asked you what you thought. We got an email from Tom. He writes, brave woman going against the crowd, friends, family, and the mainstream media takes guts.
Edward writes again, how refreshing to hear a young, brilliant American woman talk about race and facts of the matter.
Another Twitter user writes this, people like Candace give me hope for the future of this country, no matter the race, sex, or